Welcome everybody to my channel. My name is Rainer. This is Rainierbooks. I'm a German living in Sweden, living in Stockholm, and I'm mostly talking about books in English. Today it's time for another wrap-up of a week that is lying behind all of us. And additionally, I will do the C tag. Last week I had quite a good reading week. Last week I had quite a good reading week. I started and finished one book, and that is Many Rivers to Cross by Peter Robinson. I think the 26th novel with his detective superintendent nowadays, Alan Banks, in the fictitious town of Eastvale in northern England somewhere. Not far away from Leeds. A young boy, 13-year-old boy is found dead in a bin. An old junkie is found dead in a house, and this starts the story for Alan Banks and his new case. And he is very soon on the trail of a local investor who's planning a lot of buildings for posh people, and who apparently has been involved is involved business-wise with two Irish gangster brothers and an Albanian kingpin from London. So this is the main story, the B story, sort of the side story that Robinson is telling in this novel is his old friend Zelda. Zelda is a young, attractive woman coming from Moldova who has been forced into prostitution in Serbia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, and even in Paris, who's been sold in Paris, who's now free from her captivators, and who is working as a face expert because she can never forget a face, and she's very invaluable in identifying people on pictures. She basically looks at pictures in organized crime and is able to sort of connect that picture with very often with a name. Zelda is an old acquaintance, an old friend of Alan Banks, and she is on the hunt of her tormentors from the time in Serbia. The brothers, two brothers, and she finds one of them in London. And this is the other thread of events that is happening in the story. It's great and beautifully built by its building. It's like always, it's a police procedure novel, and he's building slowly, but then sort of the car in which we are driving, or the film that we are seeing, the book we are reading, gets more and more pace. And in the end, Robinson has really written another very good crime novel that is extremely entertaining, but also touching very important things that we deal with today in organized crime in general, but also the gentrification in towns, not at least in the United Kingdom. Great characters with Alan Banks and his extremely beautiful music taste. He is a music connoisseur. When you read this novel, you can always I recommend that when he starts listening to Gustav Mahler's symphony, or he's listening to jazz music, or he's listening to rock or whatever, I recommend you to put that Spotify or wherever you pick your streaming music from, and you listen to the same kind of music that Superintendent Alan Banks is listening to. That is Many Rivers to Cross. I'm waiting for the next book by Robinson to come from the library, which is called Not Dark Yet, and how the story with Zelda continues. There was quite a cliffhanger in the end of Many Rivers to Cross, which I'm not going to talk about, of course. The second novel that I have written more than half this week is How Beautiful We Were by Imbolo Mbue. This is about an African village somewhere, I think in the 1980s, when there is a great environmental catastrophe. There's an American oil company winning oil there by fracking mostly, I guess, and the soil and the water is poisoned and people die, and the American company, it's called Paxton in the novel, and the fictitious African state is corrupt, and they treat the inhabitants of the village very, very badly, but they are building up a resistance, and it's So far, I'm enjoying this very much. I'm going to make a single review about this when I'm ready with it. How Beautiful We Were by Imbolo Mbue, which is her second novel. I'm also still reading Days and Nights of London Now, The Londoners by Craig Taylor. Also this a very good read. Not every voice is as interesting as the other voices, but there are amazing stories, and Craig Taylor has talked to so many different people, to students, to plumbers, to currency traders, to tourists from all over the world, to immigrants from all over the world to London, to people who work the markets chief, estate agents, whatever. And that is really giving this huge and interesting, diverse chorus of voices, Londoners. I hope to finish these books soon. I've got 2 new books from the City Library of Stockholm, which not probably, but also likely will change my TBR, or maybe just add to my TBR in the next coming weeks. I've got the newest translation into English from the very well-known Japanese author Haruki Murakami, published by Alfred A. K. Knopf in 2021. And this is first-person singular stories by Haruki Murakami. And on the cover you have one of those beautiful monkeys that I actually saw in the beautiful city of outside the beautiful city of Kyoto in Japan a couple of years ago. And I also got a thriller, which is very interesting. I think it's from, also published this year, Anthony Quinn. It's called London Burning, and this is about the 1970s, the end of the 1970s, in a totally different period of time. Until after that, London has changed quite a lot until today. Very interesting novel, London Burning by Anthony Quinn. So this is about London, a story about a capital choked by strikes and cowed by bomb warnings. A totally different time in the history of London. London Burning by Anthony Quinn. And I actually should be ready for the C-Tag now. The C-Tag that was created by our friend Jim from Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. He has, after the A and the B tag, also created the C tag and even published already his D and his E tag, which I think almost forces me to do this tag today in my weekly wrap-up in order to keep up with all the letters coming. And here's the C tag. C is for countries: Cuba, Colombia, Chile, Congo, Cyprus, Czechia, Czech Republic, China, and Canada. What was the last book you read by an author from Canada or China or another country beginning with C? And I'm very grateful for this question because it really showed me that I have a lot to do in order to sort of regain my focus on Canada a bit, because I actually learned by doing this prompt, by answering this prompt, that I only read 1 Canadian book in the year of 2021 yet. This is not just one book, it is the winner actually of the Scotiabank Giller Prize in 2020. For fiction, this is Suvankam Tamavongsa's short story collection, How to Pronounce Knife, which is a collection of beautiful stories about Laotian immigrants to Canada. It shows, sometimes it tells these stories from a children's perspective. Sometimes it tells the story, it focuses on the first and second generation of immigrants and their problems in communication and adapting to the culture. And of course, it deals with the racism that Laotian immigrants to Canada have met. This is really a great book, How to Pronounce Knife by Suvankam Tamavongsa. C is for Canine and Cat, Show Me Yours. Right now, I don't have a canine, I don't have a cat. All I could do is show you a picture of my late Charlie, who has lived with me for almost 14 years until the veterinarian discovered a large tumor in his stomach, which had to end his life. And I'm often wondering actually when and where and if I will have a doggy or a cat here in this new apartment. Probably I should think about it. C is for classic. What is the last classic book you read? Classic has no real definition, right? But Most of us on BookTube, most of us have lived in 2 centuries, I believe. So I hope that it works well with a book that was written long before I was born, and long before any one of you was born, by E.M. Forster, Passage to India, that I buddy read with the great Margaret Pennard during her March of the Moderns. A book full of symbolism and history that opens up for many discussions about different topics. A Passage to India, a classical story, I would say, that ended up also in a classical movie. The story of, basically the story of, well, it could be a story of a male friendship, but it also could be a story of a woman, young English woman coming to India and accusing an Indian doctor of sexual assault and the consequences that this accusation led to. C is for children's books. What was the last children's book you read for your own enjoyment? No, I don't read children's books. I sometimes read young adult books, or books that could be regarded as books for young adults. So I think the last one of these kind of books was Sankt Irgendwas by Tamara Bach, which I have discussed here also in one of my wrap-ups a couple of weeks ago. But this is also for work. So C is for coloring book. Adult coloring books are a thing. Have you tried one? What are your thoughts on this? No, I've never tried coloring books. And maybe I should do it. And thanks for the reminder that these books are out there, and maybe I should try over the course of the year. If I do so, I will make a video about it, I promise. C is for comedy. What is the funniest book you have read? Well, we might have to give ourselves into another debate about cancel culture. And I admit, and I say that I couldn't see another film by Woody Allen anymore after all the things that have come to daylight about him and against him. And I also was not interested in reading his memoir. But when I was confronted with this question, what is the funniest book that you have read? I still have to go for The Complete Prose of Woody Allen by Woody Allen. This is so hilariously funny. And 3 collections of prose of really extremely full of humor, intelligent descriptions of genre fiction, of the overanalyzing of literature, of psychology, and of almost everything. Just one little example that I would like to read from this book is a look at organized crime here. It is no secret that organized crime in America takes in over $40 billion a year. This is quite a profitable sum, especially when one considers that the mafia spends very little for office supplies. Reliable sources indicate that the Cosa Nostra laid out no more than $6,000 last year for personalized stationery, and even less for staples. Furthermore, they have one secretary who does all the typing and only 3 small rooms for headquarters, which they share with the Fred Persky dance studio. Last year, organized crime was directly responsible for more than 100 murders, and mafiosi participated indirectly in several hundred more, either by lending the killers car fare or by holding their coats. Other illicit activities engaged in by Cosa Nostra members included gambling, narcotics, prostitution, hijacking, loan sharking, and the transportation of large whitefish across the state line for immoral purposes. The tentacles of this corrupt empire even reach into the government itself. Only a few months ago, 2 gang lords under federal indictment spent the night at the White House and the president slept on the sofa. In 1921, Thomas the Butcher Covello and Ciro the Tailor Santucci attempted to organize disparate ethnic groups of the underworld and thus take over Chicago. This was foiled when Albert, the logical positivist Carrillo, assassinated Kid Lipsky by locking him in a closet and sucking all the air out through a straw. Lipsky's brother Mendy, alias Mandy Lewis, alias Mandy Larson, alias Mandy Elias, avenged Lipsky's murder by abducting Santucci's brother Gaetano, also known as Little Tony, or Robbie Henry Sharpstein, and returned him several weeks later in 27 separate mason jars. This signaled the beginning of a bloodbath. Dominic, the Dominic, the herpetologist Mione, shot Lucky Lorenzo, so nicknamed when a bomb that went off in his head failed to kill him, outside a bar in Chicago. In return, Curillo and his man traced Mione to Newark and made his head into a wind instrument. At this point, the Vitali gang, run by Giuseppe Vitale, real name Quincy Baedeker, made their move to take over all bootlegging in Harlem from Irish Larry Doyle, a racketeer so suspicious that he refused to let anybody in New York ever get behind him, and walked down the street constantly pirouetting and spinning around. Conclusion: organized crime is a blight on our nation. While many young Americans are lured into a career of crime by its promise of an easy life, most criminals actually must work long hours, frequently in buildings without air conditioning. Identifying criminals is up to each of us. Usually they can be recognized by their large cufflinks and their failure to stop eating when the man sitting next to them is hit by a falling anvil. The best methods of combating organized crime are: 1. Telling the criminals you are not at home. 2. Calling the police whenever an unusual number of men from the Sicilian Laundry Company begin singing in your foyer. 3. Wiretapping. Wiretapping cannot be employed indiscriminately, but its effectiveness is illustrated by this transcript of a conversation between two gang bosses in the New York area whose phones had been tapped by the FBI. Anthony: hello, Rico? Rico: hello? Rico? Hello? Rico? I can't hear you. Is that you, Rico? I can't hear you. What? Can you hear me? Hello? Rico? We have a bad connection. Can you hear me? Hello? Rico? Hello? Operator, we have a bad connection. Hang up and down again, sir. Hello? Because of this evidence, Anthony the Fish Rotuno and Rico Pansini were convicted and are currently serving 15 years in Sing Sing for illegal possession of Bensonhurst. This is ridiculously, hilariously, and it's just funny. Yeah. Think what you will, what you want. C is for comic books. Can you explain to me the attraction of these? My daughter is a huge fan of manga and anime, and that is something that brought us finally to Tokyo in Japan in 2015 in the month of July during the rainy season when it never rained in the week that we were there. But where other people are going to the sites and to the ancient museums, we went to a lot and to the industry of comics or manga or animated movies in Japan. And there are it's $1 billion industry, and there are Japanese people of all generations, from children to old people. They are going to these warehouses, to these shops, and buy their stuff. And they have mangas about everything, every genre that is you can imagine, from basketball or football or soccer mangas to fantasy manga to boy and girl manga, of course, and until the porn industry that's also producing their mangas that are sold in the same shops. There's something for everyone, and this is really fascinating. It's $1 billion industry, and of course in Japan there's a great tradition of telling stories by drawings and pictures from the old cultural history of that country, and that has sort of ended up in the great manga world that we see today. So if you go to the places like Akihabara and Ikebukuro in Tokyo, to those big shops, you will see what great money is sort of made in this business. And also lots of mangas and animated movies have they create like plastic figures out of the characters very often, and sometimes they are very small, sometimes they are large, sometimes they are like 50-60 centimeters, and they, depending on if they are collector's items or not, they can cost a lot of money. And you can see Japanese men in office suits after office work. They go into these shops, even these shops where they only sell those figures. They can have 3 or 4 floors in Tokyo, in Akihabara, for example, and they are men in office suits are looking for a little girl statue in a bikini, which is really interesting. I would call it interesting, yes. And of course, even in Western countries, there's a lot of great tradition of comic I don't read so much comics myself, but I have been to a lot of shops because whenever I was on business trips, I wanted to bring my daughter something. So the last time I was really out was in I think October of 2019, and there I visited a shop called Apum Bapum on Rue Serpente, not far away from the famous Université de la Sorbonne. Do you have a favorite cookbook? No, I don't have a favorite cookbook. I think whenever I cook, and that's quite often, I'm going on the internet and I'm Googling for recipes. I mean, cookbooks have sort of lost their meaning to me many years ago now we have millions of recipes all over the internet. And that was the C-Tag, and I'm very much looking forward to do the D-Tag in a couple of days from now. I hope you have a great weekend. You had a great reading weekend. Tell me what you are reading down in the comments below. I will see you very soon over the course of the next week with another video and with another wrap up on next Sunday. Stay safe and hopefully we see each other again soon. Bye bye.